Chapter 1. The Silent Authority. Have you ever noticed how some people completely change the atmosphere the moment they walk into a room? They don't say anything. They don't make any dramatic gesture, yet their presence alone pulls every eye toward them. That is silent authority. It is an invisible power that doesn't work through words, but through presence. And this power penetrates the deepest layers of the human mind. In psychology, it is said that the human brain is always fighting a battle of frame control. A frame means whose perspective dominates, whose reality is accepted as the real one. The person who sets the frame becomes dominant, and silent authority is born at the very moment when, without words, you signal, "This space is mine. I'm not in a rush, and I'm reading you." Think of a jungle scene. A lion sitting silently in the grass, not moving at all. But that stillness alone makes every animal uneasy. Why? Because stillness is always the signal of a predator. Restlessness is always the signal of prey. That primal code still operates in the human mind today. In a crowd, if one person stands tall, straight, and perfectly still, every eye will first notice them. That stillness communicates, "I'm in control." Dark psychology teaches us that body language isn't just gestures, it's a network of psychological triggers. When you fidget without reason, tap your fingers, touch your face, you're unconsciously sending signals, "I'm nervous, I'm insecure, I don't belong here." In contrast, when you deliberately stop every unnecessary movement, when you become still, you send a very different signal. I am grounded, I am the predator, you are the prey. This is the first level of silent authority. But this power doesn't come from physical stillness alone. It comes from self-control. Every time you hold your body still, you signal to the other person's brain that you have control over your impulses and emotions. And in psychology, humans always bow, consciously or unconsciously, to those who have mastered themselves. Look closely at leaders, CEOs, mafia dons, or high-status personalities. They don't move much. Their body speaks, but in very limited, calculated ways. That's why their presence feels heavy. Their walk is slow. Their gestures are deliberate. Even their smiles are rare. Everything is intentional. At a subconscious level, all this triggers one clear message in others. This person is above me. That's why silent authority is the most powerful weapon in both manipulation and attraction. When you can calmly look into someone's eyes without flinching and remain still, the other person automatically feels smaller. This isn't a surface-level trick, it's deep evolutionary programming. They begin to value your approval. Whether it's your boss, an enemy, or an attractive partner, silent authority works the same way. Silent authority isn't just a technique. It's the foundation of psychological warfare. The one who is still is the real predator. The one who is restless is the prey. But does that mean you should turn into a robot? Absolutely not. Dark psychology teaches that true power lies in strategic movement. Stay still until movement is necessary. And when you move, make it purposeful. For example, if you're listening to someone, a slow nod or a controlled, faint smile signals attentiveness. But if you're constantly checking your watch, fixing your hair or clothes, you've already lost your frame. You're no longer the observer, you've become the observed. And in dark psychology, the observer is always the master. Now let's talk about subconscious drills that strengthen silent authority. The mirror test. Stand in front of a mirror for 5 to 10 minutes daily. Look into your own eyes. Don't move. Don't smile. Just stare. It will feel uncomfortable because humans can't hold their own gaze for long. But this discomfort will train you to remain steady under pressure. The public freeze. In a public place, a college campus, a party, stand still in a corner without your phone and without fidgeting. People's subconscious minds will start observing you. You'll learn that presence is built through stillness, not movement. Deep, slow breathing control. When anxiety rises, breathing speeds up. By controlling it, you calm your nervous system. Deep, slow breaths steady both body and mind, keeping you in frame. Delayed response drill. When someone asks you a question, don't reply instantly. Wait 2 seconds. Subconsciously, this makes the other person perceive you as more powerful, because a pause is always a signal of authority. The deepest psychological angle of silent authority lies in the fear of the unknown. The human brain craves predictability. When you don't react, when you remain unreadable, the other person becomes unsettled. They begin wondering, what are you thinking? What are you about to do? And at that moment, control shifts to you. Dark manipulators and charismatic leaders operate on this principle. They never reveal too much. They always understate. Their movements are minimal, but each one is amplified. That's why mafia dons and great leaders rarely overreact. They just remain calm. And that calmness has the deepest impact. Now think, if silent authority is this powerful, how can you use it practically? Imagine you're in a meeting. Everyone is restless, writing notes, spinning pens, adjusting chairs, but you sit completely still, back straight, eyes steady. The moment you speak, everyone's attention automatically shifts to you. Why? Because you already prepared the room with your subconscious signals. Or in a romantic context, if you're talking to someone attractive and you're restless, your nervousness leaks out. But if you're steady, with unbroken eye contact and deliberate movements, your presence instantly becomes magnetic. That's the attractive side of silent authority. Its real depth is that it makes you the frame controller. When you are still, you send the world one clear message. I am the reference point. And in psychology, people always adjust themselves to the reference point. That's why in any crowd, the stillest person seems the most dominant. And that's why dark psychology considers silent authority the subtlest yet most dangerous weapon of manipulation. Chapter 2. High-Status Behavior. Have you ever noticed how truly powerful people move through a crowd? They don't rush. They don't panic. They don't fidget around. In the way they walk, in the way they look at people, even in the way they breathe, one thing is crystal clear. They radiate high-status behavior. This is an art form, a way of letting your body speak without words. It says, I'm in control. I'm not desperate. I'm the center of gravity here. See, our brains are always scanning the social hierarchy. In every single interaction, subconsciously, people are judging who's above, who's below. And this ranking isn't just about money or job titles. It's written all over your body language, your posture, your gestures, the pace of your movements. Together, they tell a silent story, a story that either attracts people or makes them bend to your authority. And here's where dark psychology comes in. The biggest secret of projecting status is stillness and deliberation. Think about it. Restless people who can't stop fidgeting, adjusting their clothes, or tapping their foot, they're broadcasting one thing: I don't belong here. But the person who moves slowly, who pauses before they act, who walks at their own pace without even saying a word. They're sending the signal, I have time. I have control. That's what I call psychological gravity, an invisible force that pulls people toward you. Now, imagine a political leader walking onto a stage. He doesn't lunge for the microphone. He takes his time, looks around the room, pauses, and then, only then begins to speak, slowly and with weight. Every gesture, every silence is intentional. Nothing is accidental. The result? The audience thinks, this person must be in control. And it doesn't stop there. Eye contact reinforces status too. Steady eye contact shows power, but staring too long just feels creepy. High-status people know the balance, when to hold the gaze and when to let go. It's this balance that makes them both attractive and intimidating. But here's the flip side. Imagine someone who's constantly checking their phone, shaking their leg, or fiddling with their hands. They could be saying all the right words, but subconsciously, their body is leaking insecurity. And in dark psychology, insecurity equals low status. That's why high-status people train themselves so that every move is minimal and every pause is intentional. It's not just about dominance. It's about controlling the frame. Our brains pick up status cues through very specific triggers. Tempo control. The person who speaks slowly and moves slowly signals that they don't need approval from anyone. Psychologists call this temporal dominance. Micromovements. Small leaks like licking your lips, blinking too much, or constant adjusting all scream insecurity. A high-status person masters even these tiny movements. Vocal pauses. When someone pauses for a couple of seconds before responding, it makes everyone else think their words must carry weight. That's tactical silence. Deliberation. Slow, intentional movements are one of the most powerful weapons in dark manipulation. When every gesture looks purposeful, it plants authority in people's subconscious. Picture a negotiation table. If you're restless, you've already lost the frame. But if you're calm, deliberate, and measured, others subconsciously see you as the leader. That's why CEOs, mafia bosses, and charismatic leaders all have this one thing in common. They barely move. But when they do, the world pays attention. The psychology of slowness. Slowness is not weakness. In fact, in dark psychology, slowness equals power. When you walk slowly, when you speak slowly, you send out one powerful message. I'm important enough that the world will wait for me. Think of a courtroom. A powerful lawyer doesn't rush. He walks slowly, gestures deliberately, and pauses before speaking. His opponent may be louder, quicker, more animated, but the jury gives more weight to the calm lawyer. Why? Because calmness signals confidence, and confidence creates credibility. High-status behavior in attraction. This principle doesn't just work in politics or business, it works in attraction too. In a romantic setting, if your body language is restless, the subconscious message you send is, I'm needy. But when you're calm, your pauses are natural, your movements deliberate. The other person feels your presence as magnetic. That's the foundation of dark seduction. Less movement, more gravity. Frame control, owning the room. At its core, high-status behavior is about frame control. When you walk into a room calmly, deliberately, you automatically set the frame. Everyone else adjusts to you. That's why mafia bosses, CEOs, and charismatic leaders can change the entire atmosphere just by showing up. They don't even need to speak. Subconsciously, everyone feels the real player has arrived. Training high-status behavior. This skill isn't natural, it's trained. Mirror practice. Watch yourself daily. Notice your restless movements. Cut down on them. Pause training. Don't answer questions immediately. Wait 2 seconds. It'll feel awkward at first, but it gives you authority. Breath control. Slow breathing calms your body, your voice, and neutralizes anxiety. Public freeze drill. Stand still in a public space. Notice how people's attention drifts towards you. Dark psychology introduces another concept: shame versus power. Low-status behavior leaks shame. Nervous gestures make people subconsciously see you as small, weak, unreliable. Shame pushes you further down. But a high-status person suppresses shame. Their calmness signals, "I have nothing to hide, nothing to prove." That state mentally disarms everyone around them. High-status behavior isn't just a set of techniques, it's a psychological reprogramming. It shifts you from chasing people to making them chase your presence. You stop orbiting others, and instead, you become the gravity. Dark manipulators and charismatic leaders know this well. The world is naturally drawn to those who are calm, deliberate, and grounded. And that is the real secret of high-status behavior. Chapter 3. The Power of Eye Contact. Have you ever wondered why such a small action, like blinking, holding eye contact, or looking away, has such a massive psychological impact? Why people say that the eyes are the window to the soul? Dark psychology reveals that eyes aren't just for seeing, they directly influence frame control, subconscious triggers, and the dominance hierarchy. When you look into someone's eyes, it isn't just a visual act, it's a psychological handshake. That handshake decides who's on top and who's below, who's leading and who's following. This is why eye contact becomes a decisive weapon in attraction, intimidation, negotiation, and manipulation. Imagine standing in a crowded room and suddenly locking eyes with someone. In that moment, 2 things can happen. They either hold your gaze or they look away. That tiny reaction is the first subconscious battle. Holding the gaze signals dominance, while breaking it signals submission. That's why powerful people almost always maintain steady eye contact. Their blinks are slower, their gaze doesn't wander. It's a silent sign that their nervous system is calm, and calmness is always a mark of power. On the other hand, people who constantly break eye contact, blink rapidly, or glance around are unknowingly broadcasting a message: I'm uncomfortable, I'm not in control. And that subconscious leakage pushes them into the low status category. One of the most dangerous forms of eye contact is the freeze stare, when you hold someone's gaze without blinking. Neuroscience shows that when the brain feels an unbroken stare, the amygdala, our fear and threat detection center, fires up instantly. The nervous system either goes into fight mode or freezes completely. That's why interrogators, mob bosses, and predators have always used the freeze stare. It hijacks the subconscious and traps the other person in your frame. But there's a catch. If you overdo it, you don't look powerful, you look creepy. Dark psychology teaches that intensity and timing are everything. The freeze stare works only when it's controlled, long enough to create discomfort, but not so long that the other person fully defends themselves. Eye contact isn't just about intimidation, though. It's also one of the most powerful triggers for attraction. Dark seducers use a technique called the triangular gaze, shifting your eyes from their left eye to their right eye, down to their lips. That subtle movement subconsciously signals intimacy, sending the message of chemistry without a single word or touch. Research shows that this triangular gaze loop can even trigger oxytocin release in a romantic context, making the other person feel trust and bonding without realizing why. Manipulators also know that the most dangerous part of eye contact is controlling the shifts when you hold, when you break, and when you soften. That's what implants the frame in the other person's mind. A steady gaze with a calm face builds dominance. A softened gaze with a smile creates attraction. A freeze stare generates intimidation. Shifting between soft and hard gaze creates confusion and manipulation. And avoiding eye contact altogether, looking down or sideways, signals submission. High-status manipulators always calibrate their gaze to the situation. Dominance in negotiation, softness in seduction, freeze in interrogation. This flexibility is what makes their gaze so powerful. Beneath all of this lies a deep human instinct, the fear of being watched. Evolutionary psychology tells us that for our ancestors in the wild, being stared at almost always meant danger. A predator's gaze was a sign of threat, and that instinct still lingers in us today. That's why when you enter a room and hold steady eye contact, people subconsciously categorize you as the predator, and the predator is always in control. Mastering this requires training. Mirror drills, where you stare into your own eyes for minutes until your nervous system adapts. Triangular gaze practice with friends or strangers to observe reactions. Deliberate control of when you hold and when you break eye contact. And even focus blur exercises to calibrate your intensity. Because weak eyes always signal shame, and the person who cannot master their gaze is always trapped in other people's frames. Their eyes betray them. And this brings us to the final dark truth. Eyes are not just organs of sight. They are weapons. They are silent blades that cut into the subconscious mind without spilling blood. Charismatic leaders, manipulators, and predators all know one thing. He who controls the gaze controls the frame. So next time you lock eyes with someone, remember, you're not just looking. You're stepping onto a psychological battlefield. And in that invisible war, victory always belongs to the one whose gaze is steady, strategic, and unreadable. Chapter 4. Strategic Body Movements. Have you ever noticed how some people in a crowd don't need to speak much or move constantly, yet all eyes are instantly drawn to them? That's the secret of strategic body movements. Dark psychology shows us that the human brain is always reading signals, and every movement sends a subconscious message. When someone moves too much, fidgets, adjusts constantly, or speaks too fast, the subconscious instantly reads them as insecure, weak, and unstable. But when someone moves less, every gesture being deliberate and purposeful, they're perceived as powerful without saying a word. This is the foundation of frame control. The one who moves with control sets the frame. Think of the predator code. Stillness equals predator. Restlessness equals prey. Just like a lion hidden in the grass doesn't need to move to trigger fear in the jungle, humans too are wired to respect stillness as power. When you enter a room and stand calmly, people subconsciously see you as high status. But if you leak restless movements, you instantly drop to low status. Dark psychology calls body stillness silent intimidation, the power of freezing gestures. Interrogators, military snipers, and master manipulators use this weapon, sudden stillness. When you freeze, the other person's subconscious goes on alert because unpredictability always signals threat. In their mind, your stillness implants the thought that you are calculating, that you know more than they do. That's why pauses and freezes in public speaking, meetings, or one-on-one interactions are incredibly powerful psychological tools. In dark psychology, every movement must carry value, the currency of power. High-status individuals never waste gestures. If they raise their hand, people notice. If they nod, the meaning is amplified. Strategic body movement is about moving less, but making every movement so deliberate it becomes a subconscious symbol of authority. Imagine a mafia boss sitting quietly at a table. He listens, then slowly picks up his cigar, pauses, and says just one word: enough. With that single movement and a single word, the entire room falls silent. That's not the power of words, it's the power of movements. At the root of strategic movement lies breath control. Fast breathing makes the body restless, movements uncontrolled, anxiety visible. But slow, steady breathing makes every movement calm, intentional, and commanding. Dark manipulators sync their gestures with their breathing rhythm. Slow inhale, deliberate gesture, slow exhale. It works like subconscious hypnosis. The tactical walk is another weapon, the silent statement. The way you walk into a room already declares your status. A high-status walk is slow, steady, grounded, with firm steps that press into the floor. The arms swing minimally, controlled, not exaggerated. The spine stays straight, the chest open, projecting dominance. Subconsciously, this signals predator, not desperate follower. Even timing your responses is part of strategic movement. When someone asks you something and you answer instantly, it signals low status. But when you pause, breathe, and respond slowly, it projects that your time and your words have value. That's why high-status people always take pauses before speaking. It's not just silence, it's a dominant signal. Some movements always project authority subconsciously. A slow head tilt, which mixes curiosity with dominance. The steeple gesture, with fingers joined to signal authority and calculation. A controlled lean back, which says, I own this space. And minimal touching, avoiding nervous leaks like constantly fixing hair or touching the face. Dark manipulators use these subconscious triggers to amplify their presence. On the flip side, low-status behavior leaks through over-movement. Tapping a pen, shaking a leg, checking the phone too often. These leaks signal lack of control, and lack of control always project shame. That's why strategic stillness is the most silent yet dangerous weapon of power. To master it, practice freezing in front of a mirror for 5 minutes to observe involuntary movements. Stand still in crowded places and notice how people begin observing you. Sync your gestures with slow breathing and train delayed responses by pausing before every answer. The dark truth of movement as manipulation is this: do less, but do it so deeply that its impact lingers long after. Words can be forgotten, but body signals are etched into memory. When your movements are deliberate and calculated, you leave a permanent impression in the subconscious of others. That is the real dark power of strategic body movements, manipulating minds without saying a single word, simply through rhythm and control of your body.
Chapter 5. Alpha Walk and Power Posture. Have you ever noticed how just by watching someone walk, you can instantly tell who's confident and who's insecure? Some rush through the crowd with hunched shoulders and eyes glued to the ground, while others move slowly with steady steps, chest open and gaze straight ahead. That's the difference between an ordinary walk and the alpha walk. Dark psychology tells us that our brain is always scanning, subconsciously. We read posture and movement far more than words. It's an ancient survival instinct. Predators always walk steady and grounded, while prey is restless and bent. This pattern is still hardwired into us today. The alpha walk follows 4 core principles: groundedness, open body language, neutral head alignment, and steady eye projection. Groundedness means every step lands firmly on the ground, not rushed or desperate. And alpha communicates, I have time, I own this space. Open body language means shoulders back, spine straight, and chest open, posture that signals dominance and confidence. Head alignment means neither tilted too high in arrogance, nor too low in shame, but neutral and steady. Eye projection means calm, stable gaze, neither scanning nervously nor avoiding eye contact. Alongside the walk comes power posture. Posture is the container of your entire psychological frame. Straight spine signals confidence. Open shoulders project dominance. Wide stance shows control. And visible, relaxed hands trigger trust. Hidden or fidgety gestures leak insecurity. Low status posture is always rooted in shame. Drooped shoulders, restless movements, downcast gaze. High status posture, on the other hand, is grounded, open, and instantly commands subconscious respect, even if consciously people resist it. This is predator posture. The real test of alpha walk and power posture is in your entrance. Within 5 seconds of entering a room, people's subconscious minds form an impression. Ordinary people walk in nervously, scanning around, searching for their place. But the alpha enters with slow, deliberate steps, shoulders back, and a calm gaze, owning the frame instantly. That's why powerful leaders and charismatic figures change the entire environment just by walking in. The alpha walk works across contexts. In negotiations, it signals seriousness and authority. In attraction, it creates magnetism with slow steps, calm smile, and steady gaze. In conflict, it becomes intimidation, because predators walk slow, direct, and grounded. In public speaking, a deliberate walk before stepping on stage instantly builds authority in the audience's subconscious. To master this, train daily with mirror alignment drills, checking spine, shoulders, and head. Practice slow-motion walks for 10 minutes, grounding each step. Hold wide stances with steady gaze to build presence. And record your walk to spot subconscious leaks. Subconscious triggers make the alpha walk even more powerful. Heel-to-toe steps project groundedness, steady head signals control, controlled arm swings avoid clownish exaggeration, and pausing for 2 seconds at entry triggers instant authority. Dark psychology sees posture not just as body alignment, but as a weapon of manipulation. Open posture triggers trust. Closed posture triggers intimidation. Relaxed posture projects calm authority, and rigid posture signals defensive energy. Posture is the silent code that reprograms the other person's subconscious state. And here's the final dark note. Walk like a predator, not like prey. When your walk is grounded, deliberate, and steady, people subconsciously assign you high status. The most dangerous truth of dark psychology is this. People don't remember your words. They remember your walk and your posture. Master the way you move and the way you stand, and you gain permanent influence over others' minds without saying a single word.
Chapter 6. Vocal Command and Whisper Technique. Your voice is not just sound, it's a psychological weapon that can hack directly into the subconscious mind. Most people think body language is all about posture and gestures, but dark psychology teaches that the most dangerous part of body language is the voice. Within it lies a hidden power that can trigger fear, attraction, respect, or submission without a single touch. It's the same force that makes an army rise at a commander's roar, silences a room with a mafia boss's cold tone, or ignites desire with a seducer's whisper. Dark manipulators understand that voice equals frame control. When your voice is steady, deep, and deliberate, you automatically own the interaction. People stop focusing on your words and instead become hypnotized by your tone and rhythm. Psychological experiments confirm that audiences respond more strongly to tone and delivery than to content. A calm, deep voice always signals authority, while a high-pitched, fast voice leaks nervousness. The first weapon is the cold tone. This delivery is stripped of unnecessary emotion, flat and controlled, sending the subconscious message, "I feel nothing, I fear nothing." It intimidates, projects dominance, and instantly freezes the listener's mind. Military leaders and interrogators often use it to establish danger without raising a hand. But fear doesn't work in every situation. That's where the second weapon comes in, the warm tone. Soft, rhythmic, and inviting, this tone triggers subconscious trust and safety. It releases oxytocin in the brain, lowering defenses and making persuasion almost effortless. Dark seducers rely on this to bypass rational resistance. Another tool is silence, the tactical pause. Pauses grip the subconscious more powerfully than words. When you stop speaking, the listener's brain becomes hyper-focused, filling the gap and locking into your frame. The longer the pause, the deeper the psychological hold. Preachers, leaders, and hypnotists use this method to bind attention and intensify impact. But the deadliest weapon of all is the whisper. A whisper instantly signals secrecy and intimacy, making the listener believe the connection is special. Neuroscience shows it activates the amygdala and limbic system, heightening focus and value placed on every word. Even if the content is ordinary, the whisper convinces the subconscious that you are close, personal, and significant.
Beyond tone and whisper, rhythm is the hypnotic backbone, a voice that follows a deliberate rhythm, slow beginnings, deep emphasis, and soft endings induces a trance-like state. Cult leaders and dark hypnotists often use rhythm to bind followers even if their actual message is weak. Subconscious triggers of voice are precise. Deep frequencies signal dominance. Controlled volume reflects high status. Slow tempo projects authority, and sudden whispers spark intimacy. In contrast, weak voices betray insecurity. Trembling pitch, rushed delivery, nervous laughter, these leak shame and low status instantly. Dark manipulators know that refining the voice is even more powerful than transforming personality, because people may not always see you, but they will always hear you. And the subconscious trusts tone long before it trusts content. Mastery comes with practice. First, breath control drills. Deep breathing daily strengthens depth and steadiness. Second, cold tone training. Practice monotone sentences in the mirror with a neutral face to develop intimidation. Third, warm tone training. Add a soft smile and rhythm to invite persuasion. Fourth, whisper practice. Keep whispers clear because unclear whispers feel creepy. Fifth, pause training. Insert 2 to 3 seconds of silence between sentences to increase weight and authority. The final dark truth? Words may be forgotten, but tone and delivery are imprinted deep in the subconscious. Cold tone creates fear. Warm tone builds trust and attraction. Pauses lock the subconscious, and whispers trigger intimacy. Whoever controls the voice controls the mind.
Chapter 7. Commanding Hands. Your hands are not just tools, they are the greatest weapons of your subconscious power. Dark psychology reveals that the human mind reads gestures far more deeply than words. Every time you wave your hands, place them on the table, or point at someone, you are not just making physical movements, you are implanting messages directly into their subconscious. That's why powerful leaders, charismatic speakers, and dangerous manipulators always keep full command over their hands. Their gestures are never uncontrolled. They are deliberate, calculated, and designed to make their frame unshakable. The language of the hands is the language of silent authority, and once you understand it, you begin to decode how people's subconscious works. Open palms signal honesty and trust. A closed fist broadcasts aggression and control. A pointing finger asserts dominance and authority. Hidden hands leak insecurity and distrust. Dark manipulators use these signals like chess pieces, knowing exactly which move to make and what psychological response it will trigger. Among these, the steeple gesture, fingers joined together while palms remain slightly apart, is the highest status signal. Subconsciously, it communicates, I am confident, I am calculating, I am in control. CEOs, judges, and mafia bosses all use it, and the moment they rest their hands in this position, others accept their authority without question. It is the perfect blend of dominance and calm. But contrast that with the pointing gesture. While it establishes dominance by triggering a threat response in the amygdala, overuse creates resistance, so smart manipulators only use it in measured doses. Hidden hands, like in pockets or behind the back, are the most dangerous low-status signals because they reveal shame, guilt, or insecurity. That's why high-status figures always keep their hands visible. Some gestures project instant authority. Spreading arms wide over a table signals ownership and territorial control. Palms pressed downwards signal dominance and command. Slow, deliberate hand movements radiate subconscious authority, and a controlled handshake or shoulder pat instantly asserts dominance. But commanding hands aren't only about intimidation, they are just as powerful in attraction. Dark seducers know that a light, controlled touch releases oxytocin in the subconscious, instantly sparking intimacy. The art lies in doing less but leaving deep impact. Another high-level skill is stillness. When everyone else in a room is restless and moving around and your hands remain perfectly still, all eyes gravitate toward you. Still hands project still mind, projecting high status without a word. Subconscious triggers of hand gestures are universal. Palms up signal honesty, palms down signal authority, closed fists signal strength, the steeple signals control, spread fingers claim territory, hidden hands reveal insecurity. In dark psychology, these are frontline weapons. To master commanding hands, practice daily drills.
Stand before a mirror and observe how restless your hands are. Train them to stay still for 2 to 3 minutes. Deliberately practice the steeple to see how differently people treat you, and learn palm control by keeping your palms open and calm while avoiding excessive waving. Remember, weak gestures like nervous fidgeting, nail biting, or hiding hands in pockets subconsciously broadcast guilt, nervousness, and smallness. But when your gestures are controlled, your words multiply in power, and when they are restless, your words lose their weight. The final dark truth is this: your hands are your silent army. They can create attraction or fear, trust or danger. Dark manipulators always know which gesture to use and when. Open palms to give trust, palms down to take control, the steeple to display authority, and stillness to project silent dominance. Whoever controls their hands controls the subconscious of the entire room.
Chapter 8. Territorial Control. Your body is not just about gestures and expressions. The real dark power hides in where you stand, where you sit, and how you own the space around you. This is territorial control, the silent game of dominance over space. Dark psychology tells us that personal space is not just about comfort, it's a psychological battlefield. When someone invades your space, you instantly feel uncomfortable. When someone respects it, you feel relaxed. But when someone deliberately controls your space, you automatically fall into their frame. Every human has an invisible bubble around them, rooted in evolutionary psychology. For our ancestors, defending that space was a matter of life and death, which is why even today, when someone gets too close, your subconscious alarm goes off. Dark manipulators exploit this instinct. They know that stepping closer, standing behind someone, or blocking a pathway subconsciously signals dominance. Control over personal space is control over the mind. Body positioning is key. An open posture, arms relaxed, legs spread, shoulders open, signals comfort and ownership, while a closed posture, arms crossed, legs tight, shoulders hunched, leaks insecurity and submission. The simplest frame control comes from open versus closed positions. Whoever is open owns the space, whoever is closed is shrinking. Sitting posture also speaks volumes. The wide spread, legs open and arms resting wide, declares, "This is my territory." Leaning back signals relaxation, and relaxation always signals high status. Sitting on the edge shows insecurity and readiness to leave. That's why dark manipulators adopt wide spreads and lean backs. They pull others into their frame without a word. Standing posture amplifies this power. A wide stance, feet slightly beyond shoulder width, shows grounded dominance. Hands on hips project readiness and authority. Hands clasped behind the back signal authority mixed with silent threat, while drooping shoulders and closed stance broadcast low status. At the highest level lies owning the room. Standing at the center of a group automatically draws attention. Blocking pathways forces subconscious recognition of dominance. Taking the high ground, on a stage, a platform, or elevated spot, triggers instant authority. Dark leaders never stand in corners. They position themselves where they can oversee and command the entire environment. Group dynamics make territorial control even more powerful. In any circle, the person who takes the most space is subconsciously viewed as the leader. The one whose presence keeps drawing attention automatically becomes the authority figure. In conversation, leaning in, spreading arms, or subtly blocking space gives control over the group's frame. Dark manipulators understand this perfectly. Space control means attention control, and attention control means mind control. Psychological positioning is as important as physical. Sitting at the head of the table signals authority. Standing near the entrance signals dominance. Positioning yourself beside someone signals alliance. Behind someone signals intimidation. Every placement carries subconscious meaning, and manipulators choose carefully to give themselves superiority. To master territorial control, practice space expansion drills in crowds. Adopt wide and relaxed postures when sitting. Take central or elevated positions when entering a room,
And in group conversations, place yourself where attention naturally falls on you. The opposite of territorial control is shrinking behavior. Standing in corners, keeping arms and legs tight, backing away too often, leaving too much space. These signal that you don't own your space. And if you don't own your space, you don't own your frame. Dark psychology's rule is simple. He who shrinks in space shrinks in mind. The final dark truth is this: space is power. Whoever controls the space controls the subconscious of others. Dark manipulators, charismatic leaders, and predators all know that words and expressions come later. What matters first is where you stand, how you stand, and how much space you own. Remember, he who owns the space owns the frame, and he who owns the frame owns the mind.
Chapter 9: Deadpan Mask and Facial Control. Your face is the ultimate betrayer of your truth. Your words can say one thing, your body can project another, but your face will always try to reveal what's really going on inside. That's why in dark psychology, the face is considered the real battlefield. Whoever learns to control it gains the ability to manipulate the subconscious of others. Human brains are wired to read facial expressions instantly. Evolution trained us to detect anger, fear, or deceit as a matter of survival. This is why mastering facial control is seen as the ultimate weapon for dark manipulators. The first tool is the poker face, a completely neutral expression that hides your emotions and leaves the other person guessing. Just like professional poker players, no matter if they're holding the best hand or the worst, their face never betrays them. That unreadability creates confusion, and confusion gives you control. But beyond the poker face lies the deadpan mask, the advanced version. This isn't just neutrality, it's a blank wall where no emotion registers at all. Its power lies in unpredictability. When someone can't decode you, their subconscious rings an alarm. This person is unreadable, dangerous. That's why mafia bosses, interrogators, and dangerous leaders often use it, a blank face that sparks both fear and respect. Then comes the Mona Lisa smile, a subtle, half smile, so faint and ambiguous that the other person can't tell if you're amused, mocking, confident, or hiding something. This tiny curve triggers curiosity and mental imbalance. It makes people wonder, why is he smiling? Is he judging me? That ambiguity is what manipulates and seduces at the same time. Strategic blinking is another silent weapon. Rapid blinking signals anxiety, while slow, controlled blinking projects calm authority. Dark manipulators consciously slow down their blinking, sometimes locking in prolonged eye contact before a deliberate blink, projecting dominance, and even creating a hypnotic effect. Then there are micro-expressions, the tiny flashes of real emotion that leak through in less than a second. A flare in the eyes that betrays anger, a trembling lip that betrays fear. Trained eyes catch them instantly. That's why manipulators train their muscles to suppress micro-expressions until they almost disappear, making themselves virtually unreadable, just like spies or interrogation experts. But facial control isn't only about hiding, it's also about triggering. A blank stare can spark discomfort, a controlled smile can build trust or attraction, a subtle frown can trigger guilt, and a raised eyebrow can plant doubt. These cues implant emotions directly into the other person's mind. In conflict, the deadpan mask becomes the predator signal. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't flinch, don't react, their subconscious recognizes danger. You are not afraid, you are unpredictable, and therefore terrifying. Predators never overreact. Their faces stay calm, cold, unreadable, making them impossible to predict. To master this, manipulators practice daily, holding a deadpan face in front of a mirror for minutes, practicing the faint Mona Lisa smile, slowing and controlling blinks, recording their faces under real emotions to spot leaks and suppress them. Because weak faces always betray weakness. Nervous laughs, trembling lips, forced smiles, rapid blinking, all of these project insecurity. Dark manipulators know that making the face unreadable is the strongest psychological armor. The final truth is simple.
Unreadability is power. People trust the predictable, but they fear and respect the unreadable. That's the shift from manipulator to predator. Remember, he who can't be read controls those who can.
Chapter 10. The Power of Pauses. Most people rush through their words, filling every second with sound. But the real masters of influence understand that power lives in the spaces between words, the pause. A pause is not emptiness, it's a weapon. When you speak and then stop, even for just 2 or 3 seconds, the human brain instantly leans forward, waiting, anticipating what comes next. That anticipation gives weight to your words, because silence amplifies meaning. Politicians, con artists, and powerful leaders all know this trick. They stretch a moment of quiet just long enough to make others restless, forcing the audience to hang on to every syllable. In psychology, this works because the brain hates uncertainty. When you stop, people subconsciously rush to fill the gap with attention, agreement, or even nervous chatter. The one who controls the timing of pauses controls the rhythm of the interaction. And rhythm always equals dominance. Think of it like music. Without silence, sound is just noise. But with silence, it becomes a symphony. In dark psychology, the pause is a silent pressure point. You don't argue louder, you don't speak faster, you simply let the silence sit until the other person feels compelled to respond. This makes them reveal more, agree quicker, or submit unconsciously to your frame. Whether in a negotiation, an argument, or a conversation with someone you want to influence, mastering pauses will make your presence feel heavier, your words feel sharper, and your authority impossible to ignore. Here are some practical drills you can use to master the power of pauses and make it second nature in real conversations. 1. The 2-second rule. In daily conversations, whenever someone asks you a question, count 1, 2 in your head before responding. This short pause subtly signals confidence, self-control, and authority. In storytelling pauses, deliberately pause right before the most important detail. Let the silence hang for a moment, then deliver the key point. This trains you to build suspense and hold attention like a skilled speaker. The breath pause drill. Practice speaking while aligning pauses with your breaths. Every time you finish a sentence, take one deep, slow breath before continuing. This not only calms your nerves, but also forces your audience to stay with you. Silence endurance. In a casual conversation, drop a pause after you finish a statement instead of immediately following it up. Hold eye contact and stay calm. Notice how the other person often rushes to fill the silence, giving you control of the interaction. Recording playback. Record yourself explaining something, but insert intentional pauses in different spots. Listen back and pay attention to how the pauses add gravity, rhythm, and authority to your tone. This will sharpen your awareness of when silence is most impactful.
Chapter 11. The freeze frame effect. Most people change expressions, gestures, and postures every few seconds without realizing it. But the masters of influence know that holding a single pose longer than normal triggers something powerful in the human mind. This is the freeze frame effect. Imagine locking eyes with someone, then freezing your expression. Whether it's a faint smile, a neutral face, or a look of calm disapproval, for just a few seconds longer than what feels comfortable. That tiny stretch of stillness makes the other person's subconscious go on high alert because their brain begins asking, why aren't they moving? What does this mean? In psychology, the brain craves patterns and predictability. And when you break that rhythm by freezing, the other person feels unsettled and hyper-focused on you. Think of it like a camera flash that captures and immortalizes a single moment. You become larger than life in their perception. Dark manipulators and charismatic leaders use this in subtle ways. A slow turn of the head, then freezing. A smile held a fraction too long. A pause in hand movement mid-air.
Each one transforms a simple gesture into a psychological trigger. The freeze frame effect works because it makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability always equals power. In a conversation, it gives your words more gravity. In attraction, it makes your presence magnetic. And in conflict, it creates intimidation without a single threat. When you can freeze at will, calm, still, and deliberate, you send one primal message that others cannot ignore. The moment belongs to me. To train the freeze frame effect, you can start with a mirror exercise. Stand in front of the mirror and hold one expression, neutral, a faint smile, or even a serious gaze, for longer than feels natural, pushing past the discomfort until you notice how steady your presence becomes. Another way to practice is during conversations with friends or strangers. When you make a point, freeze your expression and body posture for 2 or 3 extra seconds before moving again, and observe how people react differently, often becoming quieter or leaning in. You can also use your phone to record yourself speaking, then deliberately insert freeze moments, holding your gaze at the camera or pausing mid-gesture to see how much more commanding your presence looks on playback. In daily life, test it in small interactions. When handing over money to a cashier, pause with your hand extended just a second longer than normal. When shaking someone's hand, hold eye contact and stillness briefly before letting go. Each of these subtle drills teaches you to stretch time, to sit comfortably in silence and stillness, and to project the kind of authority that makes others unconsciously adjust themselves to you.
Chapter 12. Controlled Touch. Human beings are far more influenced by touch than they realize, and that is where the principle of controlled touch comes in. A single, deliberate touch at the right time can bypass logic and sink directly into the subconscious. Touch is the oldest language of dominance and connection. Animals use it to claim territory, to reassure, or to intimidate, and humans carry the same wiring. A light hand on someone's shoulder can instantly signal authority. A firm handshake can establish dominance, and even a fleeting touch on the arm can create a bond that words alone cannot. The key is control. Too much touch feels invasive, too little feels weak, but the right balance communicates that you are confident enough to invade personal space without asking permission. In dark psychology, touch works because it blurs boundaries. When you touch someone first, you subconsciously establish that you have the right to lead, and their brain often accepts it without resistance. Think of leaders, politicians, or even manipulators. They guide people by the elbow, pat them on the back, or hold a handshake slightly longer than normal, and suddenly they're seen as more dominant, trustworthy, or magnetic. Controlled touch is not random. It is precise, rare, and intentional, which is why it has such impact. When you learn to time it correctly, whether to calm someone, to unsettle them, or to anchor a suggestion, you gain access to one of the most primal psychological levers of influence, one that works long before the conscious mind catches up. To master controlled touch, begin by observing how often people naturally touch during conversations. Notice when it feels dominant, when it feels comforting, and when it feels awkward. Practice with handshakes by holding just a fraction longer while maintaining calm eye contact, training yourself to project authority without aggression. In casual interactions with friends or colleagues, lightly touch an arm or shoulder when making a point. Then withdraw slowly, not abruptly, so the gesture feels intentional rather than nervous. You can also practice anchoring by pairing touch with words. For instance, place a hand on someone's shoulder when you compliment them, so their subconscious begins linking your touch with positive emotion. Another subtle drill is guiding. When walking with someone, gently place your hand on their back or elbow to lead them through a doorway. This signals quiet dominance without needing to say a word. The more deliberate and minimal you make your touches, the more powerful they become. because the subconscious registers them as signals of control, confidence, and authority.
Chapter 13. The Triangulation Effect. Triangulation is one of the most cunning weapons in dark psychology because instead of confronting someone directly, you pull in a third point of reference to control the entire dynamic. Imagine two people in conversation. As long as it's just them, power stays balanced. But the moment you bring in a third person, whether physically present or just mentioned, you instantly create competition, comparison, and tension. A manipulator might casually say, "Even she agrees with me," or "Others have noticed this too," and suddenly the person in front of them feels outnumbered, pressured to conform, or desperate to prove themselves. Triangulation works because the human brain is wired to seek social validation. When we sense that a third party is watching, judging, or siding with someone else, our instinct is to adjust our behavior to regain balance. That's why skilled leaders, con artists, and toxic personalities use it constantly. They praise one person while ignoring another. They drop the name of a rival, or they subtly compare you to someone absent, making you fight for their approval. At its core, triangulation is about shifting focus away from logic and pinning the target into an emotional struggle for validation. In relationships, it breeds jealousy. In negotiations, it creates urgency. And in power games, it cements dominance without a single raised voice. The brilliance of triangulation lies in its invisibility. You think you're reacting to another person, but in reality, the manipulator is pulling strings from the shadows, turning simple interactions into silent battles for status. To practice triangulation, start by experimenting in light, harmless conversations. When speaking with two friends, give one of them slightly more attention. Maybe hold eye contact with them a little longer or nod at their points more often, and observe how the other subtly reacts, often trying to re-enter your focus. Another drill is to introduce an absent third person into dialogue. For example, when someone shares an opinion, calmly say, "Interesting, because John mentioned something completely opposite yesterday." Then pause and watch how they instinctively defend their stance more strongly. You can also test it in group settings by praising one person's contribution while staying silent on another's, noticing how quickly the silent one tries to reclaim recognition. A subtler version involves triangulating with an imaginary standard. Phrases like, "Most people in your position would," or "Others in this field usually," create pressure without needing a real third person. The key in every drill is restraint. Don't overuse triangulation or it becomes transparent. Instead, deploy it sparingly so the other person feels an unconscious tug to compete for your validation, unaware you've just shifted the frame in your favor.
Chapter 14. The Anchoring Effect. The anchoring effect is one of those psychological tricks that works so smoothly you barely notice it happening, yet it shapes almost every decision people make. At its core, anchoring is about planting the first reference point in someone's mind, because whatever comes after will always be judged against that starting point. Think about it. If you walk into a store and the first watch you see is priced at $5,000, suddenly the $1,000 watch feels cheap, even though it's still a huge amount of money. The brain doesn't evaluate numbers, offers, or even people in isolation. It compares them to the very first anchor it was given. Manipulators and influencers know this well. A negotiator might throw out an exaggerated number, not expecting it to be accepted, but knowing it will anchor the conversation so that any smaller figure feels fair. In relationships, someone might anchor you emotionally by showering you with overwhelming affection at the start, so that later, even when they withdraw it, you keep chasing that original high. The scary part is that anchors stick. They're hard to erase because the human mind craves a baseline to measure everything against. Once you set the anchor, you don't have to argue or push hard. People will unconsciously bend their expectations and decisions around it. That's why the anchoring effect isn't just a trick of sales or manipulation. It's a deep cognitive bias that, when used deliberately, can tilt the frame of reality itself in your favor. To train the anchoring effect in real life, you can start small.
In everyday negotiations, like buying something from a street vendor, begin by suggesting a price much lower than what you expect to pay. Notice how the seller often adjusts their counteroffer closer to your anchor rather than their original figure. In casual conversations, practice emotional anchoring by setting the mood early. Start with a light joke or a warm compliment, and watch how the tone of the entire interaction bends around that opening vibe. Another simple drill is with time. When making plans, suggest an early option like, let's meet at 6, even if you actually prefer 7, because once 6 is in their mind, anything later feels like a concession in your favor. You can also anchor in group discussions by being the first to state your perspective. Others will unconsciously compare their opinions to yours, giving your words more weight. The key to mastering anchoring is repetition. Keep experimenting with setting the first number, the first mood, or the first standard, and you'll notice how often people unconsciously adjust themselves around your chosen reference point.
Chapter 15: The Power of Controlled Breathing. Breathing is one of those things we hardly ever think about, yet it quietly shapes every experience we have. What most people don't realize is that the way you breathe not only controls your own state of mind, but also has the power to influence the people around you on a subconscious level. This is where controlled breathing becomes more than just a relaxation tool. It becomes a psychological weapon. When you deliberately slow down your breath, extend your exhale, and maintain a steady rhythm, your nervous system shifts into a calm, grounded state. You stop broadcasting tension through your body. People may not consciously notice your breath, but they feel the effect. Humans are wired with mirror neurons, which means we unconsciously mimic the emotional and physical states of those around us. If you're anxious and breathing fast, others will pick up that energy. But if you stay calm, breathing deeply and evenly, their own physiology begins to mirror yours. Imagine you walk into a heated situation. Voices are raised, people are tense, maybe even hostile. Instead of reacting with the same energy, you focus on your breath, slowing it down, making it heavy but steady, and maintaining your body in quiet control. Without saying a single word, you've shifted the dynamic. The other person's nervous system is fighting to stay heightened, but subconsciously, it starts syncing with your rhythm. Their heartbeat slows, their tone lowers. You haven't argued, demanded, or forced anything. You've pulled them into your frame using nothing but your breath. This works the other way too. If you want to create urgency, you can slightly quicken your breathing. Not enough to look obvious, but just enough to raise the energy. People around you will feel the pressure without understanding why. That's why negotiators, leaders, and even performers pay attention to breathing. It's not just about staying calm, it's about transmitting control. Breath is rhythm, and rhythm is influence. Whoever controls the rhythm in a room controls the psychology of that space. Think about a negotiation table where millions of dollars are on the line. Both sides are tense, watching each other, calculating every move. One person is restless, tapping fingers, taking short, shallow breaths, shifting in their chair. The other sits still, shoulders relaxed, breathing slow and deep, with long pauses between inhaling and exhaling. Without saying a single word, the calmer one already has the upper hand. Why? Because the restless person feels rushed, pressured by their own quick breathing, while the steady breather radiates confidence and patience. In a subtle way, the deal starts to lean toward the one who isn't in a hurry, because in negotiation, the person who appears least desperate usually wins.
Now, take intimidation. Imagine you're facing someone trying to provoke you, maybe in an argument or even a physical confrontation. If your breath gets quick, your chest rises and falls visibly, and you start breathing through your mouth, you've already given them power. You're showing stress, showing fear. But if you control it, inhale deeply through the nose, exhale slowly, even allowing small pauses, you're signaling something else entirely.
You're saying, without words, I'm not shaken, I'm not rushed, and I can outlast you. That unnerves people. They expect you to meet their chaos with chaos, but instead, your breathing tells them you are grounded like a wall. They begin to second-guess themselves because your body language, anchored by your breath, projects dominance. And then there's attraction, where the effect is almost the opposite. When two people are close, their breathing naturally syncs. That's why quiet moments, like sitting next to someone, sharing silence, can feel so powerful. If you know how to control your breath here, you can create connection without saying a word. Slow, steady breathing communicates calm confidence and safety, which draws people in. On the other hand, slightly quicker breathing, controlled and intentional, can signal excitement and passion. Both trigger unconscious responses in the other person. They may not notice it happening, but their body adjusts to yours, and suddenly, there's a bond they can't quite explain. Controlled breathing is not just about calming yourself. It's about steering the emotional atmosphere around you. It can diffuse conflict, win respect, and even spark intimacy. The breath becomes invisible communication, one that bypasses logic and speaks directly to the subconscious. Whoever owns their breath owns the room. When breathing is weaponized, it shifts from self-control into subtle domination. A manipulator who understands the psychology of breath knows they don't need to raise their voice, make dramatic gestures, or even speak much at all. They can sit across from you in silence, drawing in a long, steady inhale, then releasing it in a calm exhale. That rhythm slowly infects your nervous system. Without realizing it, you start mirroring them, adjusting your own breath to match theirs. Once you've fallen into their pace, they own the tempo of the interaction. Your body is literally syncing with their control. This is how they quietly take the driver's seat without saying a word. In high-pressure settings, this can be devastating. Imagine a job interview where the candidate is nervous, speaking quickly, breath racing. The interviewer, trained in controlled breathing, stays composed, speaking slowly, pausing often, exhaling deliberately. Soon, the candidate unconsciously slows down too, adapting to the interviewer's rhythm. In that moment, the interviewer has shifted the psychological power balance, not by questions, not by credentials, but by hijacking the nervous system through breath. Even more chilling is when it's used in confrontation. A manipulator might deliberately exaggerate silence between breaths, creating an unnatural tension. You expect them to respond, to defend themselves, to fill the silence, but they don't. Their breath lingers, steady, while your own quickens from the weight of the pause. You feel compelled to speak, to explain, to justify yourself, exactly what they want. By controlling only their breathing, they push you into overexposing your emotions while they reveal nothing. In intimacy, it can be just as manipulative. By slightly quickening their breathing at strategic moments, a manipulator can make someone else's body respond in sync, triggering feelings of excitement, connection, even desire, without genuine emotional investment. The other person may walk away convinced they felt something real, when in fact their body was simply mirroring a carefully controlled rhythm. This is the dark truth. Breath, the most natural and unconscious act, can be turned into a weapon of control. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing. But to the person wielding it, it is a silent, invisible tool for bending emotions, dictating tempo, and dominating the unguarded mind.
Mirror trap and lower body reading. One of the most subtle yet dangerous weapons in dark psychology is the mirror trap. It begins with a simple technique, mirroring someone's gestures, posture, even their breathing rhythm, so that their subconscious mind starts to see you as one of their own,
safe, and familiar. Friends, couples, and close people do this naturally, but manipulators turn it into a weapon. Once the connection is built, the real trick begins. Reverse mirroring. That's when you stop copying and subtly change your own movements. If the other person follows, it means their subconscious has fallen into your frame. First you become their reflection, then you become their direction. This is how dark manipulators trap minds. Psychologists call this pacing and leading. You start by matching someone's tone, energy, and body language to build comfort, then slowly shift your pace. If they follow, your influence is established, because once someone mirrors your movements, they're more likely to mirror your decisions too. Alongside mirroring, there's another hidden weapon: lower body reading. People can control their face and hands, but their legs and feet always betray them. Foot placement reveals truth. Feet pointed towards you signal engagement and interest. Feet toward the door show a desire to escape. One foot toward you and the other outward signals hesitation. Leaning in shows attraction, leaning out shows discomfort. Restless legs, tapping feet, repeated crossing and uncrossing, pulling feet back under the chair, these all leak anxiety, guilt, or deception. That's why interrogators look at the legs, not the face, because feet rarely lie. In attraction, the same holds true. A foot subtly shifting towards you, crossed legs angled your way, unlocked ankles, relaxed open feet, these are subconscious signals of interest and comfort that most people miss, but dark seducers decode instantly. And this works not just one-on-one, but in groups too. When you mirror a group's energy, they start to feel you're one of them. But once you shift and lead, the whole group follows. Cult leaders and master manipulators use this. Mirror first, then impose their own rhythm. To master it, practice exercises. Mirror someone's gestures casually and observe when they feel comfortable. Then switch and see if they follow. Watch feet in public spaces to decode hidden attention. In group conversations, notice body angles. They reveal hidden hierarchies. But remember, mirroring is a trap. Low-status people mirror unconsciously and fall into submission without realizing it. Real power comes when you mirror by choice, not by instinct. Either you set the trap or you're caught in it. The final truth is simple. The subconscious never lies. He who mirrors first leads later, and he who reads the feet reads the truth. This concludes our journey into dark psychology. If you've found these insights powerful, make sure you like this video, subscribe for the next secrets, and drop a comment to tell us what topic you'd like us to uncover next.